just as it seemed like we were going to finally get out of lockdowns. First, we go into orange zones. Now we're heading into a red zone. And yeah. Anyway, hello there. I'm Rafael Di Furia, back at it again on another Friday night. And this Friday night, things here on this channel are going to be a little bit different than normal in this episode. And this video, it's basically a 2-for-1 click special. I was just in the middle of exporting this week's video. I had edited it, it was ready to go, and then all of a sudden I found out there are some new rules that are going to be put into place, and lockdowns are going to be coming a little bit stronger. So keep in mind, what I say in the beginning of this video is the more recent updated information, and anything later on in the video, it will still be relevant, but look at this part of the video for more of the actual information about what's going on. As many of you know, it's very difficult to keep up with the news here and to keep up with the rules and understanding the rules. And what I've done is my best to try and compile and translate from various sources into one piece of content that you guys can watch. And also, I felt as though it was necessary to talk about this because this is the newest information. And it's Friday, so I mean, it would be a shame for it not to be included in one of these videos, because I know a lot of you are very interested in the updates and what's going on here in Italy. If I don't upload a video about what's happening here, it means that there's nothing really major, but we're seeing some big updates. In some ways, nothing really is changing, but at the same time, there are some very important details that are going to be changing, and even where I live is going to be in red. So that's exciting. Sarcasm. It's a thing. Anyway, today, forgive me for looking over at my screen. I have the notes here that I've put together for this week's video. Anyway, as of today, Friday, March 12th, the new decree law with anti-COVID measures has been announced, and in the regions where there are more than 250 cases per every 100,000 people, that zone will automatically go into red. And this new decree law will be going from March 15th until April 6th. But there's a little bit of a break during I don't want to call it a break, because actually during this break, things become a little bit more intense. We'll get into that in just a second here. But from what I gathered, orange zones will be able to make their own decisions about making their own red zones where they do have more than 250 cases per every 100,000 people within the span of a week. And as you can imagine, it has been very difficult to keep up with this. I've said it so many times in my past videos that it really, even as somebody who lives here, and even for native Italian speakers, it's very difficult to be able to filter through all of this information. But I've done the best that I can to try and share this information out. But for now, some of the places that might be going red might be Trentino Alto Adige, where you can find Bolzano and Trento, Basilicata, Campania, where you can find Naples, Emilia Romagna, where you find Bologna, Friuli and Venezia Giulia, Lazio, where you can find Rome, Lombardy, where you can find Milano, Piedmont, where you can find Turin, Veneto, where I live, and where you can also find Venice, Tuscany, where you find Florence and Marche. And so, I mean, from what I understand, our numbers here in the Veneto region are already close to double of what they should be. So it seems like we're going to be going red, and orange is already not fun to begin with. Yellow is not a breeze either, but this is the situation. But the places that should be or already are red are Abruzzo, Calabria, Liguria, Molise, Puglia, Sicily, Umbria. However, we are seeing one little beacon of hope in Sardinia, where they are a white region. That means that things are looking up there, and it's a good outlook on the future. And so, hey, at least something's going right within the legal borders of the country. But here on the mainland, unfortunately, I don't believe that there are any white areas. But basically, in a white area, that's pretty much no restrictions or very limited restrictions, but also you're not allowed to go there without a negative COVID test. So that's a big deal. And I mean, honestly, hey, if that's the price of admission. But on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of April, during the Easter holiday here in Italy, Italy is set to be a red zone nationally. Even the places that are orange, and actually the places that are yellow, we'll get into that in a second because that also changes completely. But the only places that won't be going red are the white zones. And so far there's only one white zone, like I've said, and that is in Sardinia. From the 15th of April to March 2nd, and then on April 6th, the yellow zones will be turning orange. So for the time being, it doesn't really look like we will be having yellow zones here in Italy. Everything will be orange, red, or the one white zone that we currently have. There has also been an interesting little section in the decree that has made it retroactive, has made an enactment going back to January 1st, where parents will be given pay for parental leave for those with children under 14. But if the children are from 14 to 16, they're not going to receive this pay. But there's also an alternative for self-employed workers, health professionals, and law enforcement of up to 100 euros a week for babysitters. So that's something that I found very interesting, that this is something that Italy's trying to do. I mean, it's amazing that there even is a program like this where they're able to receive this. But then also, one of the important things to keep in mind is that during this time, that if you need to get around the country and go from region to region or town to town, which won't really be allowed other than for health, work, or necessary reasons. So this is something also to keep in mind in the second half of this video, that to get to Italy, you have to have a proper reason to get into the country. Tourism is not a good enough reason for the time being. And like I was mentioning before, from the 3rd to the 5th of April, Italy seems like it will be a completely red zone other than in Sardinia. But from what I've been able to find, this new type of red zone may also allow people to move within their municipal area. But one of the big caveats to that is that it's only to go to one private home once per day, and with a maximum of 2 people, and what also seems to possibly be any children who are 14 and under 14, I should say, or who are disabled or non-self-sufficient individuals between 5 and 22. And this was something that seems to be related to something that we saw a little bit earlier, just even earlier this year and the end of last year, where going into a supermarket with a child who was over a certain age, you couldn't enter with multiple people from the same family, even though it was a big national news story, like I mentioned in a previous video, where the husband and wife were fined because the wife didn't have the credit card and the husband forgot to give it to her, and he ran into the store just to give it to her. And yeah, big fines, big fines. But anyway, just because this is what is going on here in Italy right now, I felt it was necessary to go through this and try to give you guys the latest updates. Like I said, I will be sure to upload them whenever I can or share them on my social media, just because if I don't upload something that's directly talking about these updates, that means there's nothing really major happening. And maybe there will be a little bit of something here, but a little bit of something there, but nothing major enough to really say that it's worth talking about. But for now, we are back on the lockdown train. I mean, it's not like Italy truly got out of it, but I mean, things were starting to look all right almost after Christmas. Like, we were here in the Veneto, we got into a yellow zone, and then just a couple of weeks ago, we got in orange, and now it looks like we're headed for red. But anyway, on with the rest of the video. Hello there, I'm Rafael Di Furia, back at it again on another Friday night for this week's second episode of Not Your Average Globetrotter. And this Friday night, unlike on Tuesday, where we were talking about the dolce vita and the sweet life, I wanted to answer again a question that I've been getting quite a bit over the past year or so from people asking, hey, can I get to Italy? Is it time yet? And in short, the answer is still no. And in tonight's episode, I wanted to talk about something that maybe a lot of you have heard about, these COVID-free flights, the quarantine-free flights from the United States to Italy and these corridors that they will be testing out to see if they can make this type of travel actually possible. And so from what I've been hearing so far, yeah, it sounds like a great idea, but the reality of it is, if you look at the details, is that it's supposed to happen, but it may not actually be allowed to happen, but that answer hasn't been made yet. And even by the time that this video is up, who knows? Because the information has been changing pretty rapidly over the past year. But during this test period, it will be going until June 30th, and they recently extended that. And the test period is actually supposed to start on April Fool's Day. The first time I read it, I actually did think it was a joke because I had read it on a site that was not officially from Delta or Al Italia. So I was thinking, like, are they just having a joke? Because that sounds so unrealistic based on what has been going on here in Italy. And even the current situation that we're seeing ourselves in right now, which is that we may be having actually new lockdowns that we're going into starting from the Monday following this upload. Also, rather than go into all of the details, like, for example, wearing the mask on the flight, rapid testing in the departure country and upon arrival in Italy, you can go and read that from Delta on their website. Delta has a write-up about it, although I will say it's not the most clear on some points, but it will give you a good enough of an idea of what the situation is and what things realistically might look like. I'm not going to say what they will look like, because even in one of the sections there, they do make mention of that any flights after April 6th are pending approval. So basically, from the way that I understood the website, was that, yeah, they've got this test period from April 1st to June 30th, but anything after the 6th of April, they're still waiting for approval. So at this point in time, there's the possibility these tests might not be carried out, even though it's something that there are a lot of people pushing for. But before you jump on one of the deals that you might see online, because there are a lot of new options and a lot of really seemingly wonderful deals for cheap tickets to Italy or cheap tickets to anywhere. But just because that ticket is available to purchase doesn't mean that you should or will be allowed to purchase it. Because for the time being, at least at the recording of this video, traveling around the country for tourism right now isn't really a thing. And even to be able to get here as a tourist is also not possible. And that's one thing that a lot of people from abroad who are thinking about traveling and thinking about coming to Italy don't understand, that even here in Italy, we don't have so much freedom of movement right now to be able to get around the country. Just even where I live right now, you can't even go and sit out at a cafe. So even if you could somehow get to the country, a lot of things are going to be closed. A lot of restaurants around the country are going to be closed, cafes and bars and so on. Maybe you'll be able to get takeaway, but for the few places that are even open right now, they all close at 6 because of the new rules. And I can't help but think maybe it's giving a little bit of a false sense of hope, just because we still can't do anything here for the time being. So even if you were coming here as a tourist, there's still nothing you can do for the time being. And as much as I understand people would love to be able to travel back to here, to Italy immediately, yesterday, they would have already been here. We are still dealing with some issues here, and we haven't still returned to a normalcy yet. Last summer, we did see some semblance of almost something in the direction of normal. And just when it started to feel like things were starting to get better again, things started closing down again. And at Christmas, we had lockdowns, and looking forward to Easter, it looks like the situation could be quite similar, where before the holiday, we had some lockdowns, and then also after the holiday as well, we had some lockdowns. So I can't help but think that maybe, based on what we've seen thus far, that it wouldn't be out of the realm of belief that we could see the same thing even for a little bit after Easter. So, like, maybe people will wait for on Groundhog's Day for Punxsutawney Phil to come out and see if he sees his shadow or not, and if there's going to be 6 more weeks of winter or whatever. It's gotten to the point living here in Italy where it feels like we're waiting for somebody else to come out and see if they see their shadow or not, and tell us if we're going to have 6 more months of lockdown or not. It's definitely frustrating. And I'll be the first to admit, I'm usually a very positive person, but the past year has definitely made me a little jaded. And I can't say that I have the most wonderful outlook on what things are going to look like, at least this year here, because there have been so many moments where things look promising for that hope to just get completely let down. But if we're talking about who actually are the people that can come to Italy, these are people who are returning home or have a proven need to be here in Italy. Some people for work have been able to get into the country, but not everybody. I've heard of stories of it going both ways, because from what I've been hearing, there have been people who have been able to get into the country and people who have not been able to get into the country, even with what could be considered a proper reason to get into the country, or even what might be considered a proper reason could become into question whether it really is that actual reason that somebody should physically be here. And of course, people in Italy, many people, not everybody, I am going to generalize amongst a certain part of the population, are concerned about having people coming back. While Italy does need some tourism, especially in some places, to be able to get by, not all of the country is like this. But for many people here, they are very concerned that having people come back to the country could actually make things worse again. So there's a little bit of fear in some sense, but I think this is something that we're seeing all over the world, that this is not something that is unique here to Italy. Because here in Italy, we've had a really hard time here and are still having a hard time getting through all of this. And I'm not talking only about maybe the cases and the actual COVID itself. I'm talking about the effects of what's come in because of all of the rules that have been put into place. People who've lost their jobs and lost their livelihoods are still suffering from the effects of the lockdown because they haven't actually ended here. And we are still seeing large numbers here in Italy, and that's led to a very restricted lifestyle here. And even different parts of the country are more restricted, some are less restricted. And for the time being in the government, it sounds like they're talking about making more restrictions just blanketed across the whole country. So even getting back to the idea of buying a ticket, I can't say that at this point in time I would understand why somebody would now be buying a ticket even for later this year. Yeah, fine, the ticket prices now might be great, but are you going to be able to get here? I'm not sure if it's a gamble that's really worth it because of how things have gone so far. I think maybe save your money and wait for a later point in time. I'm not saying whether that's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. That's just the way that I would do it. I know that right now, anything with work is not a guarantee. So I especially would prefer to make sure to hold on to whatever I have and only spend what's necessary rather than go out and say, hey, I'm going to buy this ticket here and this ticket there and that ticket there, because by the time it's even possible to take that trip, I can't say that I would have that much trust that the flight would actually be taking place, or even that the destination that I would go to would even have something worthwhile visiting there, at least at that point in time. And I think there's going to be an adjustment period even once all of these lockdowns are all over. But of course, I'm not a doctor and I'm not any kind of professional in that area. This is just some of my opinions as a guy who's been living in Italy for the past few years and has seen what's been going on here. But even with all that said, and even though I don't have the best outlook on what might happen, I still pray and hope that there's some kind of miracle that comes and actually this just goes away. But like I said, over the past year, I've definitely become a little bit jaded. And listen, at the end of the day, Italy is no different than any other country combating this issue. They're still trying to figure out what's the best way. And there have been few countries that have actually had an approach that seems to have really actually worked properly. And maybe there's been one thing that worked well in one country, but then the same type of idea hasn't worked in another country. And so everybody's still figuring out everything and then also putting the rules into place. Just like everywhere, Italy has a political divide, which can make it more difficult to roll out certain things, and that may be for the benefit of the whole country, being able to help get people to the next step, because one side will say yes, the other side will say no, and it seems like the one thing that all politicians can still agree on, regardless of where they are on earth, is that they still disagree with each other and choose to disagree with each other. That's the one thing they all agree on. And there's no doubt that there is no clear-cut path to what is the best way forward. And maybe was it something that needed to be done at the beginning of this that wasn't done? Or is it something that can be done now, and is it too late? And of course, with what's been going on, there's been a lot of trial and error to see what is the best way of moving forward, because at this point, who can really say? And the unfortunate thing is that I've seen a number of YouTube videos, articles, news stories telling people when to expect to be able to travel back to Italy or to be able to travel internationally again. And I think it's really irresponsible. I think it is really a shame that people are getting others' hopes up when they have nothing really to base on what they're saying. Everything that's been going on, we've seen, is completely unpredictable. There's no pattern to what's been going on. So really, anybody who's saying anything is absolutely speculating. And I'll include myself in that with what I'm saying in this video, that I definitely am of the opinion that maybe things are not going to be opening up all that soon. But of course, I could be wrong. That's just my speculation based on what we've seen so far. And if I'm wrong, I would be happy. I would be completely ecstatic. But I also feel it's wrong that somebody gets up the hope of another person for a situation that very likely may not be. And I'm just trying to keep a real level of expectations here. And so I'm definitely calling out especially the other YouTube channels that have gone out and said, oh yeah, it's going to be fine to come by X, Y, and Z time. How could you say such a thing? How could you? It's impossible to know. Of course, we want to see people back here in Italy. And of course, we want to see the world back to normal. But how dare anybody give another person a false sense of hope? Anyway, I think this is probably a good time to get off my soapbox, and I probably have said enough about that. Like I said, I hope and pray that this all gets handled somehow, and just that things take a turn for the better, because it would be nice to be able to get back out and living in the world like a normal person. But even to go and see the country, I mean, like I talked about in my video last Friday night, that I do have these plans for what I would love to do and get back out to see, and all the places I would love to show. And even though Italy has been able to hold on to its love for life, there is just that expression of that love for life that I feel has gone a little bit silent. And I know that one day, somehow, we'll get a little bit more of that back. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on another Friday night. And of course, a huge thank you to those of you who help to make these episodes possible through Patreon on a monthly basis. It's because of you guys that I'm able to continue on with this. So thank you very, very much. And of course, be sure that you are subscribed to my YouTube channel. And if you're on the YouTube channel, be sure to like and share the video with your friends, because it does help out the channel. Or if you're listening to this as a podcast, be sure that you're subscribed or following this podcast. Or if you're on iTunes, be sure that you also give it a 5 stars and write a little rating if any of these videos have been helpful, or if you've been enjoying them. Be sure to let me know in the reviews section on Apple Podcasts. And of course, thank you all so much again for joining me on another Friday night. Keep an eye open on next Tuesday on my YouTube channel and social media, because I am still trying to push for that 2 uploads a week. Let's see. I'm still trying to make that happen and see how I can make that work. So keep an eye open. And of course, as always, I'm Raffaele Di Furia. Thank you so much for joining me again on another Friday night. I look forward to seeing you all next time on Tuesday or Friday, whichever one it ends up being, or maybe I'll see you on both. And of course, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you all next time. Later.